Oh, that's a sheep. Oh, you alright?
Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Quick project today, and I wanted to update you guys. I am rebuilding my mechanical fuel pump off of my 1970 Corvette. This is an AC, hopefully you can read that, 483 model. And if I'm not mistaken, this fuel pump came off of, or was originally on like a 65 to 66 model. I believe it was the high performance models. But what I really wanted to show you and share with you, give a shout out to the company for, is this rebuild kit here. Because if you go on to all of the major Corvette restoration websites, this kit is either sold out, not available, or discontinued. And after some calling around, I was able to find the kit that I needed. And here are all the parts, and they match up pretty well with the old parts. From Then and Now Automotive Restoration, and the kit for this particular fuel pump is FPA 246, and they've got fuel pumps or rebuild kits for all sorts of fuel pumps for classic cars, antique cars, and so on. I'll put a link to their website down in the description below, but I wanted to share that with you and kind of show you what this fuel pump looks like disassembled. It's relatively simple. It's just a clamshell design, and it has a base to it. Has two membranes on the inside, and the trickiest part was getting this main diaphragm off because it has this hook on the shaft that attaches to the lever on the inside of the pump like that, and that was the trickiest part to get off. But I haven't completed everything, so I may be getting ahead of myself. But this has two check valves, and then on the top it has this metal grommet, I guess, with a rubber seal on the inside just to keep oil from entering the fuel pump. So pretty straightforward design. I'm going to get this thing cleaned up and then put back together. So stay tuned and I'll show you what it looks like as we finish.
Yeah. Oh, that's a sheep. Oh, you alright?
I was able to get these check valves in and take a look at these original ones. These are probably over 50 years old, so certainly time to replace them. I did have a little bit of trouble getting these new ones, the new check valves in, and I measured them with my calipers, and they were just slightly larger than the original ones. So what I ended up doing, I had to clean out the mating surfaces or the shoulders inside of this fuel pump housing, and then I actually took the check valves and I put them in the freezer overnight. And that's, you know, with cleaning up the edges of the shoulders here and then putting them in the freezer, you know, that did help facilitate installing these new check valves. They were still a little tight, so I ended up putting them in my vise, and I just used, you know, the appropriately sized sockets, 1/2-inch drive sockets, and I was able just to squeeze those or kind of press those check valves in, and then we're able to move on to the next step. But one thing I will say about these check valves is, obviously they are check valves, so they only flow in one direction. So if you're rebuilding one of these pumps, be sure you note, take pictures of, do whatever you have to do to make sure these check valves go in the right orientation. And you could actually probably blow some air into the inlet side and make sure this check valve works. And then similarly on the outlet side, if you blow air into the outlet side, you should not hear any air bleeding past. That's obviously the way the check valve is designed to perform. So I've got those in, and then the other thing I did off camera was simply install this new gasket or membrane for the lower half, and it's quite simply, you know, just lining up these 4 screws and then attaching those, and I just put those on kind of hand tight. Now the next step is going to be installing the new diaphragm, this rubber membrane diaphragm, and then making sure we get this lined up. I have to go back and look at my pictures just to make sure which way this top piece was clocked on there. You want to make sure that goes in correctly. And then what I'm going to do is probably put a little bit of some sort of lubricant, probably just a little dab of oil, you know, on the shaft of this membrane here, just so it goes into this rubber O-ring or gasket easily without tearing it. So that is going to be the next step, and I will be right back. So that was a little bit easier than expected, actually. And here's that old diaphragm, just to give you a look at that shaft and that little opening that I was talking about, where you have to put that push rod in and hook it on. So with the vise, you know, holding this thing in, and there's the spring on the inside, so this is under tension. And you know, with the vise and everything holding it together, I was able to have 3 hands basically to put this all back together, and it was pretty easy. So I went ahead and put in the hinge pin, and then there are these little C-clips. You know, there is provisions there for you to put these C-clips. Here is the old kind of hinge pin, and it's kind of mushroomed on the top there. I guess that's how they did it, you know, with a washer, and then just kind of mushrooming that over almost like a rivet. But here is what those little C-clips look like that hold that hinge pin in. So it actually just looks like a piece of a coil spring cut. But yeah, so that's that, and now I just got to go back and look at my pictures that I took to make sure I get this thing clocked in the right direction, and you know, get it cinched down, and then it'll be ready to go back on my 350 LT1. Now that everything is put back together, I've got all the screws tightened down. I kind of did it on a star pattern just to give it some even pressure. And I did clamp this thing in the vise so I can get the bolts or the screws started initially. But just want to do a quick check, you know, function test, make sure that everything is working. So let's listen closely just to make sure we can hear the air moving through the pump. So yeah, that is definitely moving some air. And I'm going to be interested to see what the fuel pressure is after we've got this rebuild kit installed. Before it was running, if I'm not mistaken, I have to go back and look at some videos, but if I'm not mistaken, it was running right around 6 psi, which for a factory pump is where it should be. But I'm interested to see what the difference is, if any, with this rebuild kit. That's going to do it for this video. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you learned something. If you did, drop me a comment down in the comments section below. Let me know what you guys are working on. I'd love to hear it. But as always, thanks for stopping by the channel, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.